welcome back to Woodworking with Wes. I hope you enjoyed our recent video on building an outdoor table with Trex decking. When we did it, we did just the tabletop, and I promised you we'd come back and build the table legs. That's today's video. Let's get started. Our table legs are going to be made out of 2x4 and 2x6 redwood material that we purchased when we were at Lowe's getting our Trex decking. We're putting it together in a farmhouse style, and we'll be having a trestle in between. So 2 legs and our trestle that goes between them. We'll start with the legs first. Let's start with our whiteboard so that we can get the dimensions that we're after. Our table is 36 inches wide, 36 inches underneath wide, so we're going to make the top plate of our leg 35.5 inches by 1.25 inches. The rest of the material, except for this plate down here, will be also 1.25 inches. Everything else is 1 inch thick. So I started off by planing everything to 1 inch. But let's go back to our measurements. Our top support piece, 22.5, 3 inches wide. The 4 legs that we have that go down are 2 7/8 wide, 23.5 long. Our angle piece, so the angle farmhouse piece, is 2 pieces, 2.5 by 14, with a 45-degree cut on long point to long point. Then our base piece, 4.5 inches wide by 24, and then 2 feet that go underneath it, 3 by 4.5, to create the base to our table. First thing I needed to do was to plane my material to the desired thickness. Next, I used my table saw to cut my pieces into the necessary widths. I used my table saw sled to cut my material to the lengths that I had determined when I made my drawing. With everything cut to the correct size, I used my handheld router and a 3/16 roundover bit to soften the edges. My edge sander was the perfect tool to remove the saw blade marks from the long edges of my material. The final step was to sand all the pieces with my palm sander and 120 grit sandpaper, ready for assembly. We'll start with the base piece of our leg, and I have some very faint layout lines drawn here. This is the center of our foot piece. Here is the 1 inch space in between legs and 1 inch space between the legs. The line that I have right here is where I need to put some holes for screws. And so I'm going to go ahead and use my countersink, and I'm going to drill 3 holes in each one of these sections, and then this leg is going to be attached from underneath through those screw holes. We'll be putting some 3-inch screws, and that attaches the leg. Let me go ahead and get all my holes drilled, and we'll come back and put a leg on. To help me get my legs lined up, my upright pieces lined up, I'm going to clamp a 1-inch spacer piece from end to end. Along my layout lines, and that's going to help me hold my leg pieces, my upright pieces, perfectly centered where I want them to be. Okay, we got that right. I'm going to use my this to be just perfect, and okay, there we are, just perfect. That was easy. Okay, and that really is going to help us put our pieces in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a spacer piece out here. My leg pieces are now going to be fit in here and again line up with my layout line. That will help me get them centered right where I want to. I'm going to have my video come around to the back side here. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. You can see the holes that I have drilled for my screws. I'm going to line my leg up with my layout line on the front side and hold it into place. And then I'm going to take my 1.5" 18 gauge nail gun, and I'm just going to give it 2 nails to hold it in place. Then I'm using a 3-inch deck screw, and we're going to put our 3-inch deck screw into the bottom of our upright and pull it up really good and tight like that. We'll now do the other one the same way. And again, like I say, we have our layout lines, so we have our spacing correct. 2 nails to hold it in place while we put our screw in. And then our screw to suck it up tight. Now let me tip it up so you can see that these are now in good and tight. Our spacing is correct, and we're spaced correct from our center line because we put our spacer board on. I'll go ahead and finish putting the screws in here. We'll flip it over and do the same thing to the other side. Before we put our other 2 uprights on, it's time to put our little farmhouse angle piece in. And we use the exact same formula to determine where the holes were to screw from the underneath side of those. We'll go ahead, we'll clamp our angle piece to our uprights like this. We'll center them. We'll put a nail in from the bottom side and screws in from the bottom side. Then we're going to put 1 or 2 screws in from here into our upright here because of the fact that this screw is not going to be shown because there's going to be 2 more pieces to go on the outside. So we're going to attach this all and get it ready for our next 2 outside pieces. We now have all 4 uprights on, and I want to show you the bottom side so you can see all the screws. There's the screws right there for our upright pieces. Here's our screws out here for our angled pieces. And on the back side, we put 2 screws in the angle pieces from the back side. This is not going to show. This goes to the inside of the table. This is the side of the table leg that is going to show. And using the very same centering techniques, we have put together the top piece. Here's our screws from the back side of that. And this fits down in just like that. And so we'll slide that down. We'll center that. We'll put some screws through the top side here and 1 screw from the face of each of the legs, and we'll have this leg complete just like the other one. Okay, we have our legs done. Now all that we got to do is build the trestle bar that goes between. This little flat spot right here is where the trestle bar will sit. So let's get the trestle bar done. Well, the trestle bar is all done. I wanted to show you exactly how I build it, but like some things, fine-tune your design as it's actually being built. This is what we ended up with, and I used a little creative design as I was building in order to have it come out the way I wanted to. But I wanted to just show you what I did. My trestle bar is 1 inch thick so that it goes between my legs. I added these blocks on either side of my bar to give it some additional strength as it pulled tight. And I want to come around here to the end and show how that works. The trestle bar sticks through our uprights. There's a hole drilled in here and a peg that is at an angle that actually, when the peg is pounded in, it pulls that trestle tighter. And that's what makes a good, strong leg. And we'll just take a hammer and tap that peg, and that peg will tighten up that trestle bar. Okay, and that's on both ends. So now we have a nice smooth trestle bar ready to go between our uprights. Our table will be mounted on these pieces up here. This will screw from the underneath side of this plate here into the structure that is on the bottom of the table. I have it sitting on the table because I wanted you to have it up so you could see it. But this is our table leg right here, and it really made a nice finish to our table. Make a nice sturdy, you can see it's good and solid, and it's a heavy table, so we needed something good and solid. We're going to put a dark stain on this with an exterior finish so that it doesn't detract from the table at all. This will just kind of be underneath as a support piece. But there we are. Our table leg is done. And it turned out just the way we wanted it to really finish off our outdoor table. This has been a great project, and I want to see you next time when we do another great project on woodworking with Wes.